Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Ben Idowu. I'm a neurologist and in private practice in Baton Rouge. I'm also an emergency room physician, and I've been practicing in that capacity for the past uh, 7 years or so. And I've also been practicing in my capacity as a neurologist over the past 20 years. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my personal experiences in terms of the coronavirus. And I'm going to try to do so in a layman's term. In other words, I'm going to talk to you as if I'm talking to someone who is not in the medical field. I believe that by doing so, I'm going to make it as simple and as understandable as possible. As we all know, the coronavirus has been a pandemic over the past 6 months or more. The effect of the coronavirus has been seen everywhere. And in my practice as an emergency room physician, I have come in contact with patients who either have symptoms of the coronavirus or are presented with concerns about being exposed to the coronavirus. The signs and symptoms of the coronavirus infection are not particularly different from ordinary garden variety of respiratory illness that we see in our usual practice. I say this to say that the patients who present with coronavirus infection, they have very similar symptoms as patients who come in with other respiratory problems. So what is important for you as a lay person is to know when you should be concerned about your own particular symptoms. If I have been coughing for a few days and I have mild fever and body aches, I probably would not worry about it, simply because it is what one normally sees under ordinary circumstances. But if I have the same symptoms and I also have diabetes, I have high blood pressure, I'm overweight, and I'm having shortness of breath, I'll be concerned about it, because in this time and period of the corona pandemic, one must rule out the possibility of COVID-19 infection. Notice that what I'm trying to emphasize here is the presence of other chronic medical conditions, such as the high blood pressure, diabetes, being overweight, make it more likely that my symptoms will be related to COVID infection. So I would be the type of patient that needs to be paid attention to. In the emergency room setting, when we see patients like me come in, the first thing we want to make sure is that they are not having difficulty breathing. By that I mean they breathe quite all right, but they are not maintaining good oxygen level in their systems. Someone who breathes normally, who has no problem, in their system, their oxygen level should be very high, more than 90. And the percentage of saturation should be more than 97. if they're wide awake and breathing. However, when these patients present with oxygen levels that are less than 80% saturation, and they have these other symptoms, we start getting worried. These are patients that we admit to the emergency room and have a full workup. And that workup will include doing chest x-rays, doing blood gases, and doing other blood work to see about their ability to maintain oxygenation. We'll look at the white blood cell count to see if those are elevated. The white blood cell count will be elevated in someone who has an infection that has affected the rest of the body systems. So you want to look at their blood count, make sure it's not elevated. If it's elevated, then you know you're dealing with something more serious than just a common cold. Like pneumonia, patients who have been exposed to COVID and are infected by COVID and are sick because of COVID will have changes that we can pick up from laboratory work, such as chest x-ray, blood work. And in those patients, what we do is, if it's a matter of supplementing the oxygen, we do that. If it's a matter of supporting the airway, we do that. And the way we support the airway in patients who are actually going into respiratory failure is to put a tube in the trachea and give them air, meaning put them on the ventilator. For the most part, these patients do well if they don't have any serious underlying medical conditions. Because a great number of these patients come in with pneumonia, we treat the pneumonia. The pneumonia that we typically see in these patients are the atypical pneumonias, which we treat with antibiotic. Now, in terms of other medications, of course, there is the controversy about hydroxychloroquine, and there's also the introduction of new medications like remdesivir, which has been shown to help. In my practice, in my emergency room settings, we don't have patients that have to be treated with these medications. Our patients are mostly ones that need to be stabilized and then moved on to a higher level of care, such as the such as the ICU. My emergency room practice is essentially what we refer to as access to critical care, meaning that we are the ones who see patients, who determine whether or not the patients are critical, and if they are, give them access to critical care. So our job essentially is to stabilize these patients. By stabilizing, I mean if they need oxygen, we give them oxygen. If they need IV fluid, we give them IV fluid. If they need relief of difficulty breathing, we support that by what I call what I referred earlier as putting a tube in their trachea, intubation. So if you ask me what should be more important to me as a lay person presenting with symptoms that are similar to COVID-19, And my answer to you would be, yes, you have fever. Yes, you have cough. Yes, you have body aches. But do you also have difficulty breathing? If the answer is yes, the next question is this something new for you? Do you have chronic obstructive lung disease? Do you have asthma? Have you been diagnosed with congestive heart failure? If the answer to any of this is yes, what's going to run in my mind is narrowing my search to this underlying condition that you have. But if you're a young person and you do not have any of this, and you're having shortness of breath, you're having fever, I'll be concerned about COVID-19. Definitely. So the take-home message is, anyone who does not have the risk factor for being short of breath, and what are those risk factors? They would include having congestive heart failure. They would include having a history of asthma. They would also include having the tendency to have blood clots, because anyone who is otherwise healthy and all of a sudden becomes short of breath, one of the first things that we think about is whether or not they have a blood clot. And interestingly enough, one of the conditions that the infection with coronavirus can cause is the development of blood clot. So if you have a young person who is otherwise healthy, no risk factors, and comes in with fever and shortness of breath, you start thinking about, did this person just develop a blood clot as a result of infection with COVID-19? Or is this shortness of breath from pneumonia that is caused by the virus? Or is it from pneumonia that is not caused by the virus? So this patient gets a chest x-ray. If the chest x-ray is equivocal, meaning that it doesn't tell us one way or the other, sometimes we do a CT scan, which most of the time will tell us if there is infection in the lung and what type of infection. There's a typical presentation of the findings in chest x-ray of a patient who has the coronavirus infection. If we see that in chest x-ray, and we see changes in the patient's ability to maintain good oxygen, chances of being infected with coronavirus becomes high. And because today there is not a medication that is indicated for the treatment of coronavirus infection. In other words, there is yet to be the study of a particular medication that had passed the gold standard for such study to make it be indicated for coronavirus. We say that there is not a treatment, there's not a medication indicated for the treatment of coronavirus. And that's the argument that's being made right now. Hydroxychloroquine can help. However, it has yet to pass the gold standard in terms of determining whether or not it could be indicated, it could be selected as an actual treatment for the coronavirus. At this point, I would hand you over to my colleague here, Dr. Anyawoke, who is an infectious disease doctor, and she can tell you more about this. And if anyone in the audience has a question for me, I'll be glad to answer it at this point. Again, thank you very much.
Yeah, I was. It's very good that the clinicians spoke first, and saving me a lot of the background information on COVID, what it is, how you get it. As you can see, the droplets. What I wanted to show in terms of pathogenesis, the disease, is that the virus comes, especially for the lung disease, it comes all the way down to your lungs. And this is your alveolar, for example. When the virus comes down, the virus replicating here and causing inflammation makes it difficult for oxygen to go in and out from the blood vessel into your alveolar space. And because of that, the difficult breathing you were hearing is caused by by what happened inside the alveolar here. There are cells there, pneumocytes, epithelial cells, that allow oxygen to diffuse into the blood vessel and carbon dioxide to come out. That is what is responsible for the difficulty in breathing. You've heard about the treatment, the clinicians do the treatment. What you also heard is that there is no magic bullet yet. Clinical trials are going on. Okay, you've heard also some of the prevention methods, the social distancing. Don't congregate in groups too much.
Russia's vaccine that they published about 3 weeks ago that they had hasn't been through phase 3. Just because I know that most of the people here are not doctors, I'm going to go through how you actually produce a good candidate vaccine. You have a hypothesis, they usually run the sequencing, and then they put a formula to produce the vaccine. Every country gets it and takes it to start producing. So you go through a test tube, then you do the animal studies. After the animal studies, if it's proven like there's some progress, you go to phase 1 trial. That includes a few people, just to find out about the efficacy and the safety of that vaccine. And after that, if it works, you go to the next phase, which is phase 2, has maybe a couple of hundreds of people. Again, you want to prove the efficacy and the safety. At this phase 1, phase 2 phases, you kind of give different doses, especially in phase 1, to see which one produces the antibodies most and which dose was the most beneficial in terms of less side effects, being efficacious, stuff like that. And then you go to phase 3. In phase 3, you have to have thousands of people in this study. And then you show what your study finds. That's when you now get to say, you know, this is a good candidate vaccine, and we're going to register it with the registration bodies and regulatory bodies, and then we're going to put it out there, start giving it to people. With the advent of COVID-19, it looks like everybody's in a rush, but you have to do it safely. You have to do it with the public in mind, because if you rush through this stuff and you don't produce a vaccine that will be the most efficacious or safe, then it may end up defeating the purpose, because you have some people that are active access that are really saying bad things about vaccine. Now, if you go and rush through a vaccine and produce a vaccine that might have deleterious effects, at the end of the day, it may not be worth it. So I say all this to say that they did not go through phase 3. In America today, we have at least 2 phase 3 vaccines in phase 3, and I think there's one that's coming up in the next few weeks to go into phase 3. We have maybe more than 6 in phase 1, and we have more than 139 candidate vaccines that are being touted. So that would be my answer. Thank you.
We thank you very much. Any other further comments on this? Otherwise, we take another question. My question will be, it appears in the United Kingdom, for instance, that the number of COVID-19 cases fluctuates, goes on, up and down. Right now, we are having more than 1,000 cases per day, but the number of deaths are actually reducing. In the UK, sometimes, I think today we have only 9 deaths, sometimes 14. So we used to see high cases, high death rate, but today, high death rate, very few deaths. No, high COVID-19 cases and very few deaths. Is there any scientific explanation for this? Prof, maybe you can kick off the conversation. Is there any scientific explanation for the phenomenon I have just described?
Yeah, I think maybe the clinicians will actually be better with answering this question. The reason is that I believe worldwide, you see that trend. That is, as COVID-19 exists in the population, as clinicians are exposed to patients, they have better ways to manage them now than they would. I think Dr. Getty actually mentioned that those days when when they were coming in, they were not sure of a lot of things, but with time, they developed better ways to handle the cases. That is my best guess at this point. Number 2 is that a number of tests have been coming into the market, and people have a better way of doing more and more tests now. Doing more tests is very, very good, so that you can design prevention measures. At the same time, if you test more of people who may be exposed and infected but don't have severe disease, you are likely to increase the number of cases with fewer deaths. That is what I can think of at this time, because there's still no magic bullet, but I think clinicians have better way to handle those cases now than before.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Idowu, do you have any contribution to make on this point?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I spent all that time trying to get you to unmute me so I could contribute.
Oh,
you were not paying attention to that. But anyway, my daughter who just left had a question to ask, and I just posted that question. And it says, I wanted to know if the host had any reservations about a potential vaccine being available by the end of the year. Do they think that that's too soon for a vaccine to be thoroughly tested? When can we expect to have one? That's a question from my daughter who just left.
Right. So are you able?
I believe that.
Yes.
I believe that Dr. Anyawoki had answered that question, but
Yes.
I want to shed some more light on that. Just like Dr. Anyawoki said, in order for any medication to be approved for use, there has to be a gold standard. All right? The time that it takes to meet that gold standard makes it unlikely for us to have any vaccine before the end of the year, because gold standard requires time it requires very specific protocol. So to answer Benita's question, my daughter, that's not practical. If the Russians are claiming that they have a vaccine, the fact of the matter is that they have, whatever vaccine they have has not met the gold standard at this point in time.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Ayawoke, do you still want to make any comments on this point?
No, not on the vaccine. There was a question, right, about why the amount of death
Yes.
cases
Yes.
down while we're still having. So go back a little bit to 6, 7 months, 8 months ago. We were just hit like from every corner with this COVID-19.
Yeah.
It was a totally brand new virus, a novel coronavirus. We didn't know what we were dealing with. So, and remember that at least, let me speak, I live in Louisiana, so let me give you that case scenario. We have just had Mardi Gras. I don't know if you guys know what is Mardi Gras. It's like celebration here just before we start the fasting before Easter. And so a couple of weeks, 10 to 14 days later, we had just so many number of cases of the coronavirus disease. So you have people that were unaware of what was coming, and it hit them really fast. The issue is that it kind of technically overwhelmed the medical community. And so you had so many patients in a system that's not created for that. And a lot of these patients were patients with comorbidities. A lot of them were elderly. They didn't stand a chance. And so you have overworked medical personnel and depleted resources in hospitals trying to take care of all these cases. At the time, they were rationing care. That was true. And so people that, under normal circumstances, you have so many consultants, right? Trying to save this one elderly patient. We did not have that pleasure. So it hit us, and it hit us hard. Now, when we instituted the different measures and lockdown measures and face masks, wash your hands, religiously, and use hand sanitizer, social distancing, that decreased the number of cases. It doesn't mean these measures are going to stop the COVID-19. What it does is decreases the number of cases and allows the medical system to be able to handle the cases in a good number each time. I hope that makes some sense. And now, a lot of those people at the beginning that died are, like I said, elderly people, people with comorbidities. At least a lot of my patients that I lost, where they fell under this kind of category. Now, elderly people are aware that they are the endangered species. People with comorbidities are aware that they are the endangered species. So you see a lot of precautions people are taking. And then the people that are tending to not take a lot of precautions are mostly younger people, people with less comorbidities. And so even when they get infected, it's not going to be as severe to the point where we're getting to be saving people's lives or they're dying. And so if you look at all these factors and put it together, you will see that that's why, even though you have a lot of people having the virus still, remember when I made my presentation, I said 81% of the population that would have the virus will have either no symptoms at all or mild symptoms. And out of that 81%, half of them may have no symptoms at all. In fact, I think sometimes even up to 50% of the patients may have no symptoms at all. So even though you're getting the positives, you're not going to get the number of fatality as we did before. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I particularly felt very enlightened by the explanations given by our hosts this evening, because this is a question that even the media have not been, they just put the question out there in the air and nobody has, well, to my knowledge, made any effort to get the answers out. So thank you very much. We see some questions out there posted by some of our listeners. Let me.
Dan, there is a question relating to the quality of masks, that is, if depending on the type of mask, whether you become more protected or not. I don't know who can take a shot at that.
Yes.
That is, I'm sure Dr. Getty can help us with
yeah, I'll take a shot at it. So when we say N95 mask, we are talking about this highly filtered mask. In fact, it's fitted in the hospital. When I want to get into a patient's room that I need airborne precautions for, I have to wear a fitted N95 mask. And this mask will be fitted tight. You don't have too much air going through it. That would be what I would call about the best mask around. But even that mask doesn't protect you 100%. At best, maybe 95%. Now, the surgical mask that we have, that people wear, those masks, I would say average maybe 70 to 75%, but look at it in the ballpark, depending on who produces it, between 65% to 85% protective. And then the cloth mask that we have been wearing, a lot of them have less protection than the regular surgical face mask and the N95 mask. However, it still makes sense for people to wear the mask, even though in terms of protecting the tiny particles from the virus is still less. The reason is because a lot of times when we cough or we sneeze or we talk, there are larger particles, right? Most of the things that come out will be the larger particles of the spittle, of what's coming out that carries the virus. If you wear a mask, even if it's just a cloth mask, if you have the virus, it helps protect the next person to the point where even if that next person is not wearing a mask, they have maybe a 5% chance of getting that virus from you. And if they wear a mask, they may have a 1.5% chance of getting the virus. Now, you see, I didn't say 0%. Even if both of us wear a mask, it decreases the percentage of possibility of getting that virus from somebody else. And this is why we keep talking about wearing the mask and also doing the social distancing, if possible, for us to keep washing our hands with soap and water for at minimum of 20 seconds, or use sanitizer where it's more convenient. All those things help in totality in terms of mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you again for a brilliant presentation. There is this question again from Sola O. He said, what is this story of herd immunity? Herd immunity. Are you able to go on with that as well? Or,
yes, sir.
Or do we get Dr. Idowu to chip in before you?
No, I like that. And you want to talking about that.
Herd immunity, and that's a very good question, by the way. So you see, herd immunity, is the theory behind it, and it's a very sound theory, is that if you have a number of people in the community gets immune to that virus, right, it will help in protecting others from infection. You see all these people talking about anti-vax, they don't want to vaccinate their child for measles, they don't want to vaccinate their child for measles. It's because the rest of us are taking the vaccination and giving it to our children. That protects their own children. Because you see, if, like I was going to show, before that hacker came, I was going to show a screen the way COVID-19 is propagated. It's propagated faster than like how influenza virus is. So influenza virus, maybe if I sneeze, the next person, or maybe I'll give it to one person, and that one person give it to one person. With COVID-19, if I infect people around me, I might infect 2 to 3 people at the same time. And each one of those 2 to 3 people will infect 2 to 3 people. And each one of those, you see, it magnifies. So let's come back to herd immunity. So if I take the vaccine and I'm protected, and you take the vaccine and you're protected. And Dr. Idowu takes the vaccine and he's protected. Now, put somebody in between me and you and Dr. Idowu, and then somebody else that's not vaccinated in between him and 2 other people that are vaccinated. You see, it's almost like you are stopping the fire. Because I'm vaccinated, that person that's next to me that's not vaccinated and has COVID-19 is less likely to infect me, right? And that person is less likely to infect you or Dr. Idowu because we took the vaccine. So if we get to a point where we have a lot of people that are protected, either by the fact that they have the infection and developed some degree of immunity, or they have been vaccinated, it decreases the chances of everybody else getting it. So you will still have some people that will get it from time to time, but our herd immunity will help all of us to return back to some semblance of normalcy, so that we can go about our normal life without people catching the virus and dying from it so much. Thank you.
To put a number to it, herd immunity requires that about 70% of the population, should have been vaccinated. So in other words, 70% of the population should have the antibody against the virus in order for you to get that.
Right. Okay. We thank you very much. There is this yes.
Hello, Dan. Can I quickly say something?
Yes. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah. My question is directed to our doctors in the house. There is a video that just went viral today, or rather since yesterday, but I published it today. An Italian doctor was advising Italians against taking in the vaccine, that the intentions behind the vaccine is sinister and not helpful. I don't know if any of us has seen that video. It has gone viral yesterday.
I did. It's crazy the times we are in. The times we're in is crazy. And when people that are supposed to be in good position of authority, when they start giving such information, I cannot blame the public for not knowing what to believe. If you have a doctor that with all the training to start saying, oh, they want to kill you people by weakening your system with this vaccine, and then you all die. So to whose benefit? He says they want to decrease the population. You see, I am sorry, sir, I cannot explain why he has that views. I don't think it is fair to ask any one of us on this panel to explain why that doctor has that view. I am an infectious disease physician. I plan to take this vaccine. Whenever it comes out, I will take it first and I will give it to my family and I will administer it to all my staff that want the vaccine. That's how much I believe in it. So maybe me too, I want to die, or I want my family to die. It's ridiculous. I don't think that merits any more of this answer. You have a lot of people with all these theories. Fauci is the Antichrist. What is the other one? Bill Gates killing people. This and that. Based on what? 5G is the devil. Is the COVID-19 came from 5G? I don't understand why people see that. It's just, and then with the social media these days, anything can go viral. You have the people that are saying talking. You have the people that I don't know if they are saying talking. I cannot begin to explain, and I refuse to explain. In fact, I hope this is not, my explanation here is not published in public, because I do not want to join issues with anybody.
All right.
Actually,
I concur with you, Dr. Anyawoke. I'm glad that you're pointing this out. This is truly, truly crazy. We live in a world where people can come up with all kinds of nonsense. If this was to be a political forum, I would have expressed my ideas about that, but I'm going to reserve that.
I think it is better for us to not believe some of these conspiracy theories. It is we can make as much effort in our family, within our family circles, folks meeting like this, to dispel them, because there's so much of it out there. I don't even believe that doctor said that. I don't believe it, except the guy is crazy. Let me tell you, there is a software out there. make somebody to say anything. The software learns exactly how I talk, and you write nonsense, and it will reproduce that thing that is written that I didn't know in my own voice. And my mouth will be shaking along with it. So there is so much out there that anything you see that look too spooky, be sure that eventually it will be spooky. Be suspicious. And it usually don't turn out well. There are tales that my people in Edo are almost running out of their homes. They say there is a horde of Fulani coming from wherever to exterminate everybody. It is not true. They're just creating problems. There are criminals out there for sure. The government should do much to control criminals, that's true. But taking things out of proportion and trying to cause fear and disunity and unsettling situation in the society is really, initially I thought it was just childish. But when you begin to talk with serious-minded people who are drawing your attention to, look, there's really, for example, somebody is trying to say that there is a fake Buhari out there. Let me actually say it. I was born in.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Okay. We thank you very much, Prof.
May I put, one more thing, please. One more thing, please, Mr. Dan. Just today, I also produced a report I got from Reuters that that some UK researchers, military researchers, working on a report that mosquito repellents seems to be able to kill COVID-19. How reliable is that? Does that make some sense?
I don't have any data or any report. They have to publish it in a good journal for us to read it, and then we'll be able to give you a feedback on it.
Yeah, I saw one actually relating to that. I thought it was just the general disinfectant effect you can have from anything.
Exactly.
Not necessarily anything to do with a mechanism. Look, if you take, I can count as many things as you can that will kill any microbe. It's a disinfectant. Engine oil, whatever. There are so many things you can use to kill microbes. If that is it. And they can kill any living thing. So it's not everything that kills a living thing that is used in a therapeutic manner.
Exactly.
Okay, let's take another question, please, before our time is quickly running out. We have Mariam Aminu, please. I don't know whether she's still there. Mariam Aminu? All right, she was raising up her hand. She also posted a question, and she wanted the question directed to Prof. Igeseme, please. She said, with the G mutation and the fast rate of mutation of the virus, what do you think of the effectiveness of the vaccines being developed?
Well, most of the vaccines that are out there are based on key proteins that target relatively conserved areas of the spike protein, especially the
okay, Prof, let's allow Mariam to ask her question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, all.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I was just wondering, with the rate of mutation of this virus and the G mutation, now knowing that the virus is an RNA virus that undergo mutation very, very fast, I don't know what is going to happen with these vaccines that are being developed. Do you think they are going to be very, very effective? And knowing that immunity to the virus does not last for so long, the coronaviruses we know, the immunity can wane between 6 months, between even 6 months and 1 year. So what do you people think about these vaccines that have been developed? How effective do you think they will be?
Let me answer that question. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the flu
Yes,
vaccine.
I can hear you.
Okay. You know, we have the flu vaccine, okay, which is made for every flu season, all right? The same thing is,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
the same thing is may wind up happening with the corona vaccine. Every season, the flu virus mutates, all right? So vaccines are made custom or tailored to the flu that is pandemic, so to speak, at that period in time. So that's what we're going to see. That's what I suspect we're going to see when it comes to the coronavirus. Even if the coronavirus mutates, because we have been able to make a vaccine, that vaccine can be modified to the next mutation of the coronavirus. What do you think, Dr. Anyawoke?
I'm just going to add that. It's
All right.
not really, the virus is not really mutating that
All
fast.
right.
The virus is not mutating that fast. I mean, it's been around now for maybe 8 months, 9 months. In December, when it first started in Wuhan, China, it actually was the L strain. That L strain mutated, I think sometime early January in Wuhan, China, to the S strain. And that S strain then was able to get out. And by the mid-January, we had 2 new strains, V and G strain. And I think that was the last time we had any major mutation, because the G strain has since then mutated at least twice, which is GR and GH. And if you look at it, they are all similar. And when they produce the vaccine, they don't produce the vaccine with just one strain. They produce the vaccine with multiple strains. It may still be that that is enough to give protection against the virus when somebody gets in contact with the virus. So like Dr. Idowu was saying, every year they produce the flu vaccine and they utilize the strain from the season before and do certain calculations to produce the strain for this season. Sometimes it's hit and miss though, but the the COVID-19 virus vaccine, if we can give at least 50% of it to work, I think we would have made so much achievement.
I think the other element I wanted to add was that in addition to including building a multi-valent vaccine and also taking the flu approach of making it seasonally, what you find is that most of the subunits that are targeted now are actually very conserved. I think that was what I read about the Russian, I think the Russian product is the S protein. What they did is to target a very conserved region of the of that protein. And that conserved region has been conserved for a long time. That is, so it's stable. It's not necessarily mutation free, but it's stable to the point that the immune response to it has not changed considerably for several years. And so when you adopt that, looking at there are areas of every microbe that change and change and change frequently, and there are other areas that don't change as such, yet immunogenic. And so when you target those conserved regions, you are likely to get a vaccine that will last for a while. So in a combination of all these factors, actually, Dr. Aminu is a professor of microbiology in ABU. She's a professor of virology. She was a Fulbright scholar at CDC a few years ago.
Okay, I was going to add that at worst, we may have to do booster doses. So if it didn't work, it worked for like a few months, we can always give booster doses.
All right, thank you. Our time is running. Let's take another question from Dr. Ignatius Emeka Igwe, please. If you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Dr. Igwe, please. Dr. Ignatius Emeka Igwe, please. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Otherwise, we'll be taking the concluding. Okay, I think there is another question I saw here, which haven't. Yes, question from Hope A. Can one be reinfected after possibly getting the infection and being cured? Can one be reinfected? We start from Dr. Edogu, please. Can we?
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, there is one case. There's one case that has been mentioned so far about reinfection. And in my experience in the emergency room, I have had patients who come in that, again, this may be a factor of the testing itself. There are patients who came in who were antibody positive initially, and several weeks later, they come back being antibody negative. But then again, let me caution here that this may be a factor of the testing.
False positive.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Nyoke, any experience with that?
I've had a few cases and consultations that have been, somebody had the virus a few months ago, they're back in the hospital, they're testing positive after they had tested negative. And it was kind of a dilemma in most of those cases because I wasn't sure if, the initial tests after they had been treated that tested negative, if it was a false negative, or if this current one is just from viral particles. But there was this case that was published earlier this week in Hong Kong, where there was a particular patient, he was 33, he got the virus, he had the mild symptoms, he recovered, he traveled to Spain, I think for some business, and then came back. But I think Hong Kong is testing everybody, and they tested him again and he was positive. And this time around, they checked, they did a genomic sequencing, which they did on the first strain he had. And it showed that the genomic sequencing showed that these two strains were two different viruses, two different strains of COVID-19 virus. So they came to the conclusion that absolutely he had a reinfection. But the promising thing about this was the fact that he had no symptoms this second time. So I'm thinking, okay, so maybe it is possible. Now, this is just one case, and N is equal to 1 is not much in medicine. Yeah. We have to wait for more findings. Unfortunately, we are not doing the sequencing of all these patients the way we're supposed to. I think with time, but now people are just trying to save people. With time, there will be more studies where they can sequence all these different strains and be able to tell us. And then is it possible if the patient is reinfected by the same strain? I believe we'll be able to find that out, hopefully in future. But I'm tempted to think that there is reinfection because if you look at the other common coronaviruses, they do have reinfection, like the Professor Aminu was talking about. They do have reinfection in like the common coronaviruses. So it makes sense that there will be. The thing is, how long does the immunity last before we can manifest? If the issue is that we have reinfection and we don't have symptoms, I think that would be fine. However, those people will become asymptomatic and then transmit the virus to other people that might be susceptible. We have a deep way to go.
Oh, we really have
I think Dr. Emeka Igwe is here now.
Yes, okay, yeah. Dr. Emeka Igwe, please, yes.
Yes, hello, this is Emeka Igwe from Germany. Yeah, my question is, what are we actually thinking about convalescent serum, and how do we think that the therapy using serum from people that have been infected will really speed up the therapy for COVID?
I think Dr. Getty addressed that point earlier. Maybe you can...
Sorry, I just joined in late because I was in a different meeting. I'm in Germany quite late. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing about convalescent plasma is theoretically it should be able to work, especially with high titers of the immunoglobulins that should produce neutralizing antibodies to take care of the viral infection. So, but that's in theory. The CDC was conducting a trial where they had about 30-something thousand patients. And unfortunately, it wasn't like double-blinded. They didn't have any patients that were not given the therapy. What they did is they had patients that they gave high dose, and they had patients that they gave low dose. Since you're a physician, I'm going to go into it a little bit. The Infectious Disease Society of America, which I'm a member of, suggests that for us to be able to give high dose convalescent plasma, we should give a high enough dose at minimum 1:320 or more. Where the CDC, we're thinking because of political pressure, came down and was able to, this week, approved convalescent plasma therapy, but they approved it with such a low dose. They'd be like, okay, we could use 1:160, or we could, where that's not available, we could also use 1:80. But that wasn't even close to the minimum that IDSA suggested. So in theory, this should work, but we have not been able to do conclusive studies to show that it actually works. And that's where people are having concerns.
We thank you. Yes.
I wanted to chip in the one scientific aspect of this convalescent serum therapy idea. The assumption, the situation is that people who recover, you know, it was very popular during Ebola time, at least for acute cases, people who recover from the infection, if you take their serum, it contains antibodies that can protect anybody who has an acute case from the disease. The direction of the research, because it's potentially an effective way to really address acute cases, is what you also presently have for some antivenoms for snake and some of these deadly toxins. What you have is that you produce antibodies against them, you isolate the antibodies, and an antibody has a binding region. And if you can get the sequence of antibodies that have very high affinity for the microbe or toxin, you can actually clone out that part from the, by doing reverse genetics and prepare tons of that down. And that is likely to be the direction in terms of more science, because how many people are you going to be able to get to bleed and collect sera and keep waiting for people to use it on? So I think in future that approach we have a big boost from genetic engineering. If you do reverse engineering, you have a lot of those antibodies. They can be generated down, and but let's keep our fingers crossed. In due course, when they have enough of those sera, the research will take it to another level. And
we thank you. We thank you very much, Prof. We have only 2 minutes remaining. We have Ben Michael in the house, please. He's also a physician. I don't know whether you have, Ben Michael, do you have any contributions to make on any of the questions that have been asked or any of the contributions that have been made?
Well, I did want to ask something. Hello, I'm Ben Michael Idabu. I'm also in the United States. I'm in Gainesville, Florida right now. The question I wanted to ask was if there were any strong studies on the use of interferon alpha or interferon beta for COVID treatment, as far as mitigating the severity of illness. I wasn't able to find too much on it, but I just wanted to know if any other person on the panel could speak on interferon alpha or interferon beta.
we thank you very much, Ben Michael. Thanks for joining
Yes.
us tonight. Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
Dr. Ayawoke, please. Are you able to?
Yeah. So I know that once we started seeing cytokine storms, and then earlier on we find out that IL-6 was being produced, unlike in the other coronaviruses where they produce IL-8. They started throwing this theory about of immunomodulators. I don't know of any comprehensive study that has been completed right now, but I know that there are some that are ongoing. That's probably why you haven't found anything.
I see.
Yeah, there are some that are ongoing, but there's nothing that has been published yet.
Okay.
In Italy, there's an Italian group working on it, on the interferon thing.
I see.
They believe it is effective. It might end up as an adjunctive therapy as well.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Doctor,
Michael is my son.
Yeah, yes. I'm Dr. Edu's son.
all right, we thank you very much. We have this question from Titus Olowokere, but I think it has been Titus Olowokere. I think it may have been covered previously. She said there have been reports that a new strain of the virus have been discovered lately. Would that be a mutation of COVID-19? Would I be right to say that this question has been covered in previous answers given?
Right.
I think I talked about strains and I described them. And I think the last strain that we know of, the last mutation must have been somewhere in around February. So
Yeah.
that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Okay. There's also this question. I think it may have also been answered from. 1 second. From. No, let me know. Dan Juma, is it? Sorry, give me a little time. I have this question for John Madabuchi. Does survival from COVID-19 infection offer any form of protection for subsequent infection with COVID infection? What are your experiences? I think it's also been dealt with when Hope asks whether can someone be reinfected, unless there'll be any other addition from any of our guests on this topic, on this matter.
Well, I have one patient that actually came up with COVID-19 disease. She is a nurse at one of the hospitals that I work at. She initially, when she was infected, she was significantly ill. However, not too long ago, she became ill again, but the illness was not as severe as the initial. But then again, we don't know if this illness was due to COVID-19. She had the same kind of presentation and has PCR, which is another test we did do for it, was positive. So I'm not sure if the point is, the point I'm trying to make is, if this was a case of reinfection, the severity was less than the initial infection.
Right. Dr. Ayawoke?
Yeah, I think I talked about that before.
Yes.
I have had some cases, but they're rare. And if this happens, they'll be few and rare. And what the tendency, the preponderance looks like, even if it was a reinfection, it was a milder form of it, which altogether is what we expect, right? That's what we would hope for. And so even if there's going to be a reinfection, that means there's some degree of protection. That goes back to the question that Professor Aminu asked earlier on, in terms of the virus mutating and if the vaccines will be protective. We don't have too many information, but from just anecdotal information from the patients I had, the patients my friends had, the consultations I got, the one Dr. Dewu had, it seems to show that even if there was a reinfection, it was less in terms of impact.
We thank you very much. Dr. Emeka, are you raising your hand again, or is it the previous hand you raised? Dr. Ignatius Emeka Igwe, are you raising up your hand again? If you can unmute yourself, quickly, please.
Maybe you should unmute him.
Yeah, I try to. I can only. Okay. All right. He has.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Quickly, please.
So I'm actually sorry because I joined in quite late.
Yeah.
The thing is there any kind of research going on COVID in Nigeria? Because that's something that I'm very much interested in.
I think I was aware of a Nigerian group that actually said they sequenced the virus. I was asking Professor Aminu sometime whether she knows any biosafety level 4 in the place. She said there was probably some. So it's possible, because I'm not sure of how else they could sequence the virus if they don't grow it. It's maybe from the little sample out of the nasal swab. I don't know, but it will be a big question. It will be very scary to really do dangerous research in an environment where you don't have 24/7 light and electricity. Because if you are in a containment and the light goes off, and it's really, you really be at risk. So that's all I know. I'm not sure of it.
Yes. The last time we have Professor Maurice Iwu here, who claims that he and his group are working on such projects. I think he had a meeting with a government representative on the matter, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, DG. So I wouldn't know the extent they have gone on their project. But if you will, we have his contact. If you want to establish contact with the Nigerian group on research on COVID-19, we'll be happy to make their contact available.
All right, that would be very great, because I mean, I know Professor Gesame, I did work with him while I was in CDC, and I am actually, I'm a microbiologist and done a lot of research in vaccine development.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be good, Dr. Igwe, to know. It's just that sometimes from home, things come up and you just scratch your head. It's
Professor, he will be very unhappy with you if you make this statement before. When I had him,
I'm just scared.
The last time he was here with us, he was very furious with someone who was trying to question his.
Yes, I actually asked for the mechanism of action of the cure claim that he had. He didn't like the question, whether it was they had antiviral or it had anti-inflammatory. The other thing you find as well is that you have one concoction or one capsule. They now know how to package things in capsule, interestingly. It cures everything that is incident to humanity. It's just like you said this one, the same capsule we cure Ebola, COVID, the same capsule. So sometimes it's ridiculous. So
let me give my last. Yes, sorry. Let me give my last question, please, and then you take it to give us your concluding comments. And any doctor in the house, we'll be happy to hear from you. What we have is being recorded, and we normally transcribe and edit them into a report, which a lot of Nigerians do read us. So we would like to take this last question and give us your concluding comments so that our readers in Nigeria will be able to enjoy. My last question is, the forecast, the scientific projections of COVID-19 casualties is correct to a very large extent. The scientific projections, for instance, in the UK, the scientists here said if 20,000 people died that would be a success on their part. And now in UK, more than 40,000 people died. In the United States, scientists told us that they expect 200,000 people to die. And now we're having up to, I think, 180,000 now. But in Africa, they tell us up to 10 million people will die. Surprisingly, their projections for Africa was so outlandishly out of the mark. What would you have to tell us this, our guests tonight, and then use it to make our concluding comments, please. Let's round it up. Two minutes, please.
Yeah, let me quickly put it, because I had a table that is two and below for most of the countries in Africa. And based on diagnosed cases, I had a big problem with the testing. The testing was very low. However, of the diagnosed cases, the death rate was not over 2%. And I have been thinking about it, because in the UK, it's more than 12%. In several European countries, it's so high. Even those that have done a good job with testing. The point is that if the death situation as predicted for Africa pans out, by now we'll have coffins all over Lagos, all over Edo, all over the place. But the fact that we don't see it will suggest that there is something. I don't know what it is. I don't want to invoke genetics, because Black people outside of Africa are susceptible to COVID. And so I'm not sure what it is. What some people have alluded to, the underlying anti-malaria therapy that people are on in Africa. Well, that may be, but even South Africa, with a lot of testing, they still have very low, about 2% of the death rate, still about around 2%. So there is something in the continent that is yet to be built into the equation. That is what, because the death rate is surprisingly very low. That is an important. It's the death rate is surprising. It's beating almost all the conventional predictive models that we have out there.
We thank you, Dr. Iwoke, please.
So I think the issue with Nigeria in particular, and Africa as in general, is peculiar. And I think the factors are multifactorial. We don't do enough testing. We don't have the capacity to do a lot of stuff to help us with the diagnosis. People are dying, but they term it other ailments, or sometimes they don't give it any diagnosis. A lot of people don't die in the hospital system. You don't know what killed them. So it's multifactorial. It's very difficult to say. The projections that they had in Africa, I'm not sure that anybody particularly gave a good number, but I would say that the virus is known to not be that active in warmer climates. Although we've had it in Nigeria, we've had it even in Kano, Kaduna, which places that are known to be very hot. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to figure out the answers to these questions. And I think that is the least of Nigeria government's problems, to spend money on such for us to figure out why and what's going on. I can't give you more than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ido, please.
Well, something that came into mind is the speculation that the BCG vaccine that most of us who came from third world countries have received may have something to do with our acquired immunity against the coronavirus. I think that's worth looking into. And as a matter of fact, there has been either a retrospective study that are looking at to see what role did the BCG vaccine that most of us received is playing now in our immunity against coronavirus.
All right, we thank you very much. Dr. Ignatius, we will be happy also to hear from you from Germany.
My perspective on that is I do have a feeling that, like one of the guests mentioned, that we do not have enough data, and that people don't die in our hospitals, or that they die at homes, and we do not have enough data to actually tell what is going on. The other thing is that I also feel that most people, even in the West, we have never carried out the full known Cox postulates on all the people that died. The mere fact that you have a PCR positive sample does not mean that that is the cause of the death of the people that died. So in the level at which people died initially, most of them may not even be COVID related. I mean, that's actually what I think, because they did not actually carry out the postulates, meaning isolating the virus to get the same effect. So still there are in this data that we have so far.
We thank you.
So that's my take on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Ben Michael, if you are willing to or able to make any contribution on this subject, we'll be happy to hear from you before we call it a day. If you are still there, or you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Oh, hi. Yes. I guess this past weekend, I also read this open letter from some team of researchers based in Brazil, but it involves some statisticians and mathematicians and other physicians in the United States and also in the UK, talking about the various studies on hydroxychloroquine. The conclusions did not match with the numbers that were in those studies, and there seemed to be some correlation between the onset of receiving the hydroxychloroquine therapy and the mitigation of the symptoms, and that correlation didn't seem to be included in these studies. In Annals of Medicine, the New England Journal of Medicine, and a few other scientific journals. I just wanted to bring that out and see if anyone had gone over the study design of these hydroxychloroquine studies.
Okay, we thank you. Let's just take just one comment on the matter before we round it up. Any speaker taking it up? Any takers, please?
So, okay. Were you going to talk, Prof?
No, I said, well, the clinicians, we know whether it worked or it didn't work. Okay. And you already addressed that you had tried it. And,
yes.
And there's been a number of studies that have been published so far. Some of them are very little, had little numbers, so that wasn't like, big numbers, so that it's not that good. But the preponderance of the evidence doesn't seem to pan out. However, there are still ongoing studies that are being done by the CDC. I would just wait because they are much larger. I would just wait a little bit more for their results.
Yeah. Yes. Are you speaking of the COP study as well?
Yes.
I see. Yeah, I was looking into that design, and it seemed that the dose of the hydroxychloroquine is pretty high. And it looks like the people who use it successfully use it in combination with zinc, which is not an arm of this COP study.
So there have been various there have been various studies. Some of them looked at just hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. I think a couple of them have been just chloroquine. Most of them have been hydroxychloroquine. And some people looked at it with hydroxychloroquine and Zitromax and zinc. Some looked at it just hydroxychloroquine and Zitromax. Some looked at it with hydroxychloroquine and zinc. The jury is really still out there. But preponderance of the evidence is not panning out. There's been a few of the studies that seem to be supportive, but those studies can be said to be a little flawed. And the numbers were not that big. So that's why we're waiting for these bigger studies that would hopefully put everything into perspective.
Yes. Well, thank you very much.
We thank you very much. It's been a wonderful evening. Dr. Benedict Idowu, a renowned neurologist, having a lot of personal experiences on COVID-19 cases in the United States. We thank you very much for being with us tonight, to make it more than 2 hours available to us. That's extraordinary. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We are, Dr. Anyanwoke, please, thank you very much, an infectious disease specialist. I understand you've had a lot of, this is your area of specialties. You've created a lot of time to deal with such cases in the United States, and yet you were able to bring out time to be with us tonight. We thank you.
May I add that I'm here because one of our strategies in the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas is to be able to be out there helping our community, especially during this time of COVID-19. I'm also the chair of the AMPA Infectious Disease National Committee, as well as the chair of the COVID-19 Task Force. It is my mission, it is my goal, it is my honor and pleasure to be here.
We thank you. I will have come to that later on, but thank you very much for pointing that out. Professor Geseme made me aware of the work your task force has been doing, and in this area. So we thank you very much for bringing out time from a busy schedule to be with us tonight. Professor Joseph Geseme, a well-known face in our program, we thank you very much. Last time, Nigerians who attended were very happy that, in as much as many have read about your research efforts in several other fields, and now on this field, they were happy that we are benefiting from your expertise and research and immunology and infectious diseases. So, Prof, thank you very much for being with us again tonight.
Thanks, Dan. It's good. Keep it up. You're doing a great job with journalism.
Let's point out to especially our listeners that Doctors Benedict Idowu and Dr. Anyanwoke are chairing AMPA COVID-19 Task Force for various medical missions. They belong to Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas. I also understand that you undertake a lot of medical missions to Nigeria. We will be happy to help you to publicize it. Prof, you are my contact. At any time your colleagues are undertaking these medical missions, we will be happy to let Nigerians know of this work that you are doing. We'll be happy to popularize it for you any other time you are engaging in these medical missions.
Thank you. We will let you know.
All right. So we thank you all for coming out here tonight. Dr. Ignatius from Germany.
Thank you. If I may add, I'm also a member of association in Germany where we are also doing a medical reach out in terms of delivery of equipments and drugs. And the association is called Igbo Christian Professional Network. So maybe that is something also we can reach out in future for you guys.
Yes, I'll leave my contact. I'll leave my contact in the chat forum before we finally leave. So I will be happy. We will be happy personally to publicize whatever activities you are undertaking, especially on behalf of Nigerians, because that is why we are here. Yes, we will let Nigerians know what you are doing in this regard. So we thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Ben Michael, thank you very much for joining us from, I forgot where you said you are joining from.
Florida.
Florida, yes, Florida. Thank you very much. I think some of the doctors in the house have have left. There were a lot of doctors at the beginning, up to 20 from up to 36 at the point, until we started having these interruptions. And then, so we thank you all for coming tonight. We would like to have another updates on COVID-19 research and advancement in medicine, maybe in the next 1 month. So once we put up another program, please, we'd like you to give us updates on what has been happening in the field. A lot of people are still in the dark, even though these have been with us for several months now.
Good point.
Yes.